Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third annual Get Ready, Get Prepared information sessions on hurricane preparation. My name is Reginald Arundel, and on behalf of the Department of Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs, I would like to extend a very warm greetings to everyone, and of course, to thank you all for responding so positively to the invitation to be part of this very necessary intervention. This evening, we have a number of engaging presentations, which we believe that you will greatly enjoy. And ultimately, the idea would be for you as representatives of your esteemed organizations to share this information with your members, constituency, and network, of course. Besides that, I would like to add that this particular intervention complements government's ongoing activities where it pertains to doing its utmost to ensure that its citizens are always prepared and, of course, to foster resiliency within the communities. Far be it from me to remind everyone in this room that we received word that we can expect another active hurricane season. Not too long ago, we saw some weather in our sister islands. We got a touch of it, and it could be a sign of things to come, but we are not asking for that, correct? Correct? Yes. Thank you so much. So we are very excited about this. As I said, it's the third one, and based on the responses, we believe that it is very necessary. Based on the turnout, we know that it is extremely necessary. So once again, thank you so much. I have to add that when you came in, you signed your attendance, correct? Yes. And everyone received a ticket, correct? Everyone got a raffle ticket? Yes. Okay, because at the end, we'll be doing a raffle for a prize. So make sure you stick around for that. If not, you can give it to me and I'll accept it on your behalf. All right? I also want to state, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, a chat group was created, right, primarily for the representatives of each organization. The purpose of the chat group is to ensure that when it comes to updates and sharing information, it can be as smooth as possible. All right, so please, if you're not part of the chat group, let me know and I'll add you. That's no problem whatsoever. Please turn your phones on silent or vibrate. And of course, save all of your questions at the end of the presentation. So write it down, because in the interest of time. And most of all, I want to let you all know that I will be contacting the representatives because we would love to have your feedback where it pertains to this particular program so that we can evaluate it and make improvements where necessary. So I think I've said enough at this particular point in time, and I would like to invite our department head, Mistress Chantal George Huneveld.
Good evening once again. I'm so delighted to see that this room is so filled with different individuals from different organizations. It actually speaks into what community development does, which is collaborate with the community partners, of course. It's truly amazing to witness, the strong collaboration amongst the various organizations as we diligently prepare for the upcoming 2024 hurricane season. I extend my deepest gratitude to the staff of s3Ep1 and especially the lead for this project, Mr. Reginald Arundel. Additionally, to all my colleagues, the facilitators for this evening, who has steadfastly supported our mission. This marks our third year hosting these Get Ready, Get Prepared information sessions, as Reginald highlighted earlier, and to your unwavering commitment has been instrumental in driving our progress forward. As we approach the 2024 hurricane season, it's paramount to the communities to prioritize preparedness and awareness. Participation in these informational sessions and maintaining vigilance are crucial elements in ensuring the safety and resilience of our community in the face of potential hurricane threats. In one of our many roles, of course, we are dedicated to raising awareness and empowering each of you to proactively take steps. I encourage all of you present this evening to attend every session and share this vital information with your friends, your neighbors, your aunts, your uncles, your network. It's our aspiration that through these sessions, you not only enhance your knowledge, but also gain additional insights. Over the next 3 weeks, we will delve into important topics together. And to add a bit of excitement, as Richnald mentioned, we would have a raffle, offering prizes that can assist you, especially in the upcoming season. I eagerly anticipate seeing each of you at every session. Your continued commitment is a cornerstone for the success of this initiative. Together, let's forge ahead, collaborating and raising awareness of the importance of being ready and prepared. Our collective efforts will undoubtedly contribute to safer and more resilient community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chantal, for those very inspiring words. And at this time, I would like to invite to the podium Ms. Sheryl Leblanc to deliver her presentation on behalf of the St. Maarten Met Office, right, about tropical storm formation and development.
As you said, my name is Sheryl Leblanc. I'm from the Met Office. I'm a meteorologist. And here tonight to give you some insight on tropical storm or tropical cyclone development. And later on, we'll talk about what we expect for this season. This is just an outline, what we will touch base on this evening, the definition of a tropical cyclone, the Atlantic hurricane season, conditions for formation, stages of development, the structure of a hurricane, the impacts, things that you should listen for, and then some of our forecasting tools. Okay, so a tropical cyclone basically is a rotating organized system of clouds. So you need clouds, you need some rain and some thunder, and this you called a tropical cyclone. It originates where we call the tropics, where you can see in this map in the red shade, between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. This area is the tropics, and that's where we are located. So we are in the hurricane belt where the hurricanes and storms form. A tropical cyclone also has a closed circulation. During the hurricane season, you may hear that it's not yet a storm because they cannot find a circulation. What they mean by that is, if you look at these arrows, they have to find the same barometric pressure to form a circle. If you have one barometric pressure in one area and one area, you have to find the same in a circle. That is when there is a closed circulation. So for a tropical cyclone, you need that closed circulation. And in our northern hemisphere, we live in the northern hemisphere. Brazil and Argentina is in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, all our hurricanes and cyclones rotate in an anti-clockwise direction. Okay, so it goes like that. The wind goes back to front. But in the southern hemisphere, they rotate the other way. They rotate clockwise. Okay, so you can see with my arrows what direction they are located. Also, tropical cyclones are tropical depressions. You will hear tropical storms, you will hear hurricanes. All of them together are tropical cyclones. So we have depressions, you may hear tropical waves as well, tropical storms, and hurricanes. In our region, we call them hurricanes. If you go to China and Japan, you will hear typhoons, but they are the same thing, okay? In the Indian Ocean, they call them just cyclones. So when you hear these terms, they are the same hurricanes. We know in our part of the world, the hurricane season starts on June 1st and ends in November 30th. That is just official dates. Based on records, hurricanes can form at any time of the year. We have had hurricanes in January, February, March, right down to December. Those of you who are older may recall certain instances like that. But the official, when you find most of the activity happening, it's between June to November. And if you look at these maps there in the colors, it just tells you when we see most formation and where. So in June, early June, most of the storms will be forming in the Gulf of Mexico. In August, when we get to the peak, it will be forming around the Caribbean islands and the Atlantic Ocean. And September, you may find them everywhere. Okay? The peak of the season is between August and October. Why? When we look at historical data, hundreds of years of data, and you put them on a graph, most of the activity falls around September 10th. So with the graph, you will see when it increases. From about August to October, that's when we have most of the activities. And if I ask you when most of the activity forms in St. Maarten, when will you say? September, around September 5th, September 6th, right? Okay, so this is when we have most of the activity, and that is why we say this time of the year is the busiest time. Now, the conditions for formation. These are just 4 conditions. All 4 doesn't have to exist for a storm to form. One could be more dominant than the other, but these are the ingredients required for the formation. Sea surface temperatures have to be about 26.5 degrees, not just at the surface, but down to about 150 meters deep. Light surface winds, if the winds are so strong, you know when it's raining and you have strong winds, it tends to blow the clouds away. But you need these still conditions for the hurricane to form or for the storm to form. You need a pre-existent disturbance. This is when you have something like what happened over the weekend, a little rain and thunder and clouds. You need that kind of environment. And again, around the tropics, these 5 degrees to 30 degrees north. Now, the different stages of development. First thing you will hear is a tropical wave. A tropical wave, then followed by a tropical depression, a storm, and then a hurricane. These are the steps. One doesn't come before the other. So a tropical wave on a satellite map would look something like that, some disorganized stuff going on, just clouds, crazy clouds, thunderstorms, something like what we had last weekend, where the winds are less than 23 miles an hour. Then we go to the tropical depression, where things start getting better. It looks better organized. The wind speeds have now moved from 23 to 38 miles an hour. Then we have the storm. You can see better formation. Winds have increased 39 to 73, and that is when it gets a name. So if it's a wave or it's a depression, no name will be given. You will hear Tropical Depression 1, Tropical Depression 2. But when it gets to a storm, that's when it gets a name. And we'll talk about the names a little bit later. Things start looking brighter. Brighter for them, but not for us. You can see the nice formation. Then you have your kick right there. And you can see the center. What do we call this center? The eye. So now we call it a hurricane from 74 miles an hour and higher. Now, when we get to a hurricane, there are different categories. Category 1, 2, right down to 5. After Irma, most people were saying Irma was a 6, some people said a 7 and an 8. Some people ask us why they don't change the scaling system. Anything above 156 is considered 6. It could be 200, it's still 5, okay? What we have to bear in mind is what damage can be done by each of these. If you have just category 1, you experience dangerous winds. You might find a tree breaking a branch, some stuff like that. But when we get to 3, these are the major hurricanes. Anytime it gets to category 3, 4, and 5, and then we expect catastrophic damage from these, and we know very well what that is like, right? The structure, how it is. The center, everybody knows the center is the eye. Not that it can see us, but it's just called the eye. When the eye comes over your island, you see clear skies, everything goes calm and nice. You can get out, not a wise thing to do at that time. You can get out of your house at that time. That's the clear you are given. But when the next part of it comes, the winds are often in the opposite direction. And if I am to make you understand how it goes, if you look here, if your island is here, remember the winds are going to be coming like this. So you are going to get winds from that direction. But when the eye passes you and you are on this side, the winds are going to come from the north. Okay, so that's how the circle works. And when people say, I heard the wind coming from that direction, after the eye, the wind was coming from that direction. That is because you're on different part of the circle. Okay? The eye wall is the very dangerous part. That's where you have the strongest winds and the heavy rainfall. And we have spiral bands as well that can be very dangerous. A hurricane can be miles away from your island, and you have a spiral band just resting on the island, and it can dump hundreds and hundreds of inches of rain. Just the spiral bands. I remember in 2011, there was a hurricane that time it was called Ophelia. I was back in Dominica. Ophelia was north of Antigua, had nothing to do with Dominica. And the spiral band remained over Dominica for hours. And then you should have seen the devastation after that. Yeah. So the spiral bands are very dangerous as well. Okay, we get to the naming of storms. Every year, there are 6 years of names. You can see 6 lists of 21 names. We have 24, so we have up to 29 already prepared. The names are in Spanish, French, English. There are boys' names and girls' names, and so on. That's how the list is, and it is prepared by the Hurricane Committee, and the Hurricane Committee is made up of directors of each Met Service. For us, it's the Region 4, which is made up of Canada, North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. So they meet every year around March, April, to evaluate the past hurricane season and the upcoming hurricane season. And they are the ones that put the list together. If one of them has caused tremendous devastation, the name is retired. It's removed, meaning that they replace it with another name beginning with the same letter. Or if it's a boy name, another boy's name is put in. So I have here, I'm bringing you back to 2018 so you will understand. So we have lists from 2018 to 2023. So 2018 names are being used again this year, 2024, 6 years later. So 2019 will be used next year. 2020 names will be used again 2026. So every 6 years we have the same list. But if one of them created a lot of damage, a name is striked out and replaced. So for 2024, it was 2019, but we don't have Florence. Florence created havoc in the US, so Florence was removed. So in our 2024 list, we have Francine for F. Okay? Also, for 2018, we had Michael. This year, we have Milton. Okay? 2019, Dexter replaced Dorian. Remember Dorian in Bahamas? Yes. For 2020, Laura was removed. So in 2026, there won't be any Laura. You will see Leah. For 2021, Ida removed to replace Imani or Imani. And then 2022, we lost Fiona and Ian. Ian was a dangerous one for Florida, and it has been replaced by Farah and Idris for the 2028 list. And 2023, no hurricanes were replaced. So another change that happened in 2020, you remember, if the list is exhausted, all 21 names are used, they go to the Greek alphabet and you have alpha and beta and so on. The whole naming thing is because we don't want it to create any confusion. For example, the older folks remember Louis in 95. If we kept Louis on the list and then Louis comes again another year and creates some more damage, which Louis are you going to refer to? Is it 1995 Louis or another year? So the whole naming thing is to avoid this kind of confusion. So the same thing was happening to the Greek alphabet because you cannot change the Greek alphabet. Every year they put the Greek alphabet and then you will have alpha and alpha, beta and beta. So from 2021, it was decided by the Hurricane Committee that they would put a supplementary list instead. Okay? So for this year, this is the supplementary list in the event that we exhaust our 21 names. Okay? Okay? Let's hope we don't have to use these names. Okay, so we are familiar with these impacts. We all know them very well. 3 main impacts from hurricanes and storms. Storm surge, those of us who live near the ocean, the strong winds, and heavy rainfall, which creates floods. We don't even need heavy rainfall in St. Maarten, right? So for storm surge, it's an abnormal rise in the water generated by the storm. And storm surge happens long before the hurricane even arrives because remember, the hurricane spins the ocean. So the ocean moves ahead, the waves move ahead. So long before, even if you live near the ocean and you hear a storm is coming and it's expected to arrive tomorrow at 8, you know from today the seas are already rough. Okay? We can have waves up to 20 feet past a utility pole. And what can happen again, near the coast, you can have inundation where the water goes far inland depending on the edge of the ocean. Strong winds. This picture was taken after Irma. We walked past that building because our building was destroyed where we were housed during Irma and during the eye, which I told you don't get out. We had to get out during the eye. And we walked past the airport in this condition, and that was when this photo was taken. We could not believe what we were seeing. So you can have, with the strong winds, you can have debris, roofing material, loose objects flying all over the place, like missiles. You can have down power lines, and we know everything about that, okay? Heavy rainfall. This picture was taken in 2014. It wasn't a hurricane, and it wasn't a storm. Anybody remember that? No, it wasn't a storm. It wasn't a hurricane. The 7th of November, 2014. We just had an upper level trough interacting with a wave at the time, and then we had 255 millimeters of rainfall in 24 hours. Yeah. And we have had many occasions like this, not hurricanes, not storms. So there are extreme weather events that are not even hurricanes and storms, okay? And for this year, we are expecting to get many of those. Okay, things to listen for. Tropical storm watch, hurricane watch, tropical storm warning, hurricane warning. Whenever you hear a watch, you still have some time. It's like, it doesn't have to be 48 hours because depending on when it is formed and how far away it is from your island, you might not have 48 hours. But when you hear a watch, is that you still have some time to do something. But when you hear a warning, whether it's a hurricane or a storm warning, that means you will get hit. So last minute preparation, you have to rush everything right now. So again, I will say these hours do not mean anything. It just depends on how far, because a storm could form very close to your island. In less than 24 hours, it's already on you. So all you need to know, they say a watch, okay, I still have some time. But when it's a warning, yes, it's happening. Small points to remember if some people do it or some people don't do it anymore to chart storms or to plot storms. Remember, when you're plotting, you are just plotting a point, and that point is the center. Remember how wide it can be, and it can be very much on you when you think the point is all the way over there. So just to bear that in mind. Tropical storm and hurricane force winds extend from the center. When you are listening this year to a hurricane advisory, remember when they say hurricane force winds extend 100 miles from the center, 200 miles from the center. This is very important because if the hurricane is 100 miles away from you, or it's going to be moving 100 miles from your island, and the hurricane force winds are extended 100 miles or 150 miles from the center, you know for sure you will get hurricane force winds. But you need to listen for that. If you hear it's extended 50 miles from the center, and it's going to be passing 200 miles from St. Maarten, then you know you will not get the hurricane force winds. So these little things are important to note. Okay, some of the tools that we use. The first one is a radar image. We just got our radar installed last year, September. So we have our own radar, but at that time, this image is from Irma, and it was from the Guadeloupe radar. What radar image shows us is the amount of rainfall, that's all. So the brighter the colors, the heavier the rainfall is at that point. I know during hurricanes and storm, people have all sorts of pictures sending. Sometimes people don't even know what these pictures mean, but once it's a bright, nice color, they share this, okay? So the radar image is just to tell you the rainfall. The one in the middle is called an infrared imagery. It tells us how cold the clouds are, and cold cloud tops give you a lot of thunderstorms. So that is the message we get from these images. The brighter the colors, the colder the cloud tops, or the taller in the atmosphere the clouds go. The other one is a visible image. It can actually show us where the thunderstorm cells are. You would see it like a little popcorn when we look at it closely, and that's what we get from these images. Another tool we use is the Hurricane Hunter. These are aircraft reconnaissance. They fly over and into the storms and send us the information. They use this tool over there. They just drop it down. They are called drop songs. And this sends back the information to computers, and they write us. You can't see it very well, but they would tell you the position of the storm, how fast it's moving, how strong the winds are, the pressure, and all the other information that we get to give you out. This is what it comes from, okay? So inside of the Hurricane Hunter, they often come to different islands so people can see how the plane is. This year they were in the Southern Caribbean. They were in Barbados last week. They were here a couple years ago. Not couple, but maybe more than 5 years ago. So we're not sure when again they'll book a visit to St. Maarten. So you can see the structure of inside. Inside of the aircraft is padded, because you can imagine it's a vigorous flight when they have to go through these storms. But they like what they do. Okay, now for the 2024 hurricane season. The predictions you may have heard are very high this year. On a normal occasion, we have just 14 named storms. We have a list of 21, average 14 a year. 7 of them become hurricanes, 3 of them become major hurricanes. But in 2023, what we had 20 named storms, we had 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. In St. Maarten, we were not impacted at all, I would say. We were clear last year. But it was a very active season because we had 20 named storms. On average, you have 14. The 3 other columns I have here are different institutions that made forecasts for 2024. Look at the numbers. 23 named storms, 24 named storms for 2024. 6 hurricanes, 5 hurricanes. Why did they come up with these forecasts? I have the forecast for 2024 is for most active season on record. They're expecting it to be the most active on record. And I don't really rely on forecasts because, let me tell you why. Whether it is they are predicting it to be a busy season or they are predicting it to be a less active season, we all have to do the same preparations. Because it is not whether it is busy or it is slow that matters. What matters is you getting hit. In a hurricane season that is less active, we can get hit. Is it busy for us? So you have to make the same preparation, whether the prediction says busy or not. So I don't bother with the predictions as such. But why they are saying that it is probably going to be the most active season on record is because of our sea surface temperatures. They are extremely warm. In February this year, there are areas in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, that was as warm as summer in February. Okay? So I was reading an article this week that says that the Atlantic has not cooled since last summer. So from last summer, the Atlantic Ocean is still warm. You know, normally in January and February, you feel chilly, and so we didn't have many of those days, maybe 1 or 2. It has been warm all the time. So this is one of the major reasons why it is predicted to be an above normal season. And the next one has to do with a phenomenon called La Nina. You may have heard La Nina and El Nino. Last year, we went through an El Nino. Now, all these things happen in the Pacific Ocean, but they have reactions to our Atlantic Ocean. So when there is an El Nino, we have a quieter season. Although we had an El Nino last year, the season wasn't quiet. Why? Because the sea surface temperatures were up high. They never went down. So as I was saying before, it could be one ingredient, it could be all of the ingredients coming together. Once you have one that is extremely high, it may alter the whole result that you get. So this year, we expected to have La Nina. La Nina is the cooling of the Pacific, but what it makes us wet. So we have more conditions where hurricanes and storms can form on our side. And the La Nina we are expecting this year is expected to begin when our hurricane season will be at its peak during August, September, October. So that's the other threat. Okay, this is just a chart I took this morning. So for a 30-year average, this is the Atlantic. Everywhere you see red is where that's warmer than normal. There are areas in the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico that are about 3 degrees warmer than normal. The little blues are where it's cooler than normal. So we have warmer than normal in most places. And this is the chart that tells us about the El Nino and the La Nina. At the bottom, we have April, May, June, which is the season we just ended. Our season now is May, June, July. And you can see a long gray bar. This is the neutral. Gray is the neutral. Red is El Nino, blue is La Nina, and the gray is when it's neutral. So right now we are in a neutral phase where we are ending the warming in the Pacific and we are going into the cool stage. But remember, that brings rain for us. So if you see where blue overtakes, it's in July, August, September season. That's when the hurricane season picks, and that's when La Nina is expected to present herself. Today in the tropics, all the reds all around us, you can see where we have 27 and 28 and maybe 29 degrees Celsius. What we need for a hurricane to form? 26.5. So you see, the greens and the blues, that's where it's cooler. So if a hurricane or storm forms where it's red now, and it moves over the cool part, it will lose its energy. But all the reds, that is potential areas where it can form. Okay? And this is the satellite image for today. So this is a satellite image this morning. The rain that we had last week was because of this system. Up here is a low pressure system, and you can see it's just tugging a lot of moisture. St. Maarten is right here, all over the area. So that was where we get our rainfall from, and it's going to remain like that until Wednesday, so we may have showers in and out until Wednesday, until it clears out. So just wanted to show you what's going on now. We have no storms or hurricanes in the vicinity yet. Okay, so we just spoke about the hurricane season. I am going to tell you something which is very important, maybe more important than what we just did. If you have to remember something, remember from now. We have the hurricane season to deal with. There is something that is happening recently. Last year, you may remember, it's the heat season. We do not know a lot about it like we know about hurricanes. Some people are not aware that heat affects human beings or how heat affects human beings. I attended a workshop recently where health officials from across the Caribbean and Met personnel met in Jamaica to discuss this issue because it's very, very important. This year, scientists are predicting that 2024 is also going to be one of the hottest years on record. 2023 was the hottest in 174 years globally. 174 years. You know that? You get that? And this year is expected to be hotter. Anybody remember how hot it was last year? Okay, so it's going to be hotter this year. Based on our records at the airport, because we do not have stations in Phillipsburg and around the island, based on our records at the airport, 2023 was the warmest in the last 25 years. So we are also feeling, not just globally, we are feeling a little bit of it. September last year, we recorded, was the warmest September on our records. And we have records dating back to 1950. On a normal year, we have about 40 hot days. Our hot days are days where we have maximum temperatures of 32.2 degrees. So on a normal year, based on our records, we have 40 of those days. Last year, we had 109 of those days. And you know what happens? When it is so hot during the day, the night doesn't cool. So imagine somebody, during the day, you're hot, you go to bed, your body does not get the time to cool off, and next morning you get up in the heat again. It affects people differently, psychologically. Children behave differently. People who take various medication for various illnesses. I was told cancer patients, the heat reacts differently to them. So there are a lot of things we have to learn and understand about this heat problem. In the United States, weather-related deaths, heat has the highest. Can you imagine? We are seeing heat is becoming a major problem, and not just the hot days, but the duration of, like, we get a little rain in between. But sometimes when you have a lot of cloudiness, and if it was hot during the morning time and then you get a cloud cover, you're actually going to feel hotter what happens when the earth starts to evaporate, lose the heat, there is nowhere to go because of the cloudiness. So the heat comes back down and just makes a circle. That's why we feel hotter. Now, even though the thermometer has 30 degrees, based on the breeze, based on the humidity, a human being will feel hotter. This is called the heat index, how you actually feel. If it is breezy, it's okay, you will feel a little cooler. But we observe days where it is very still, that you don't have any breeze, and then you still have that heat. So we, as community, we have to think of different things. Imagine people who don't have air condition, or they cannot even afford a fan. They live in cramped up houses. If we think of how climate is changing going forward, even we who live in normal buildings, there are adjustments we may have to think of doing to our houses, more ventilation. Our classrooms at schools, sometimes the classrooms are very, very warm. Another thing they are looking at is students, you bring them out for sports. During 10, 11, and 3 p.m., that's when the sun is its hottest. And then sometimes that's the time they have sports, and they stay outside for long periods, and people don't think about that. So even schools may have to make adjustments. It's a lot to think of. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. So the Caribbean heat season goes from June to November. For St. Martin, our hottest time is August to October. That's when we feel the hottest. So these are the people who are at risk, people who work outdoors for long periods, people who work on the airport, construction workers, people who work on the road. These are the effects. It can trigger strokes, fatigue, death, even death, yes. Small children are vulnerable. The elderly people, people with chronic diseases. Low-income population is people who don't have a proper home and can't afford what to cool them down. Yeah, these are some of the precautions you can take. Drink lots of fluid, not just juice, but water. The time, 11 to 3, I mentioned that. Sunscreen is not just for the tourists. If we are outdoors, we need to use sunscreen as well. Umbrellas, hats, caps, whatever it takes. Light clothing, not black, and hoodies in the hot sun. Infants and children, do not leave them in cars if you have to run to the supermarket. Think of that. And check on your elderly and friends.
Thank you so much for that comprehensive presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Ms. Veronica Jansen-Webster.
Good evening, everyone. Just briefly, I wanted to thank the Department of Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs for inviting you here today. It's very important to have our stakeholders in the community with us. We let you know via our guest speakers, I think it's going to be for 4 weeks, what to expect with the upcoming season so that you can inform your members and also other people in the community. And as was mentioned, look out for the vulnerable, look out for the elderly in your community, in your organizations. Make sure you check on them. I know my Rotary Club is present. In the Rotary Club, we have a call-down list. So during hurricanes, we call and we check on each other. Make sure that in your organization, you also have a list like that. It's very important that you know that you can identify where everyone is. And so I encourage you to be aware and let everyone know that hurricane season is coming again. Okay? And let us all be safe. And hope that although it's going to be, the forecast looks bleak, it will not touch us. Okay? So, in Jesus' name.
Our next speaker is none other than Ms. Hart from the Windward Islands Emergency Medical Services, right? All right. And she'll be delivering a presentation and short demonstration about first aid and CPR.
My name is Michaela Hart, and I am a member of the Windward Island Emergency Medical Services. And today, what we are going to be touching on just a little bit about WIEMS, first aid kit at home, what is CPR, what is an AED, the CPR steps, how to stop the bleed, first aid basics, and then of course we'll have some questions and then the closing, and then our information. So WIEMS is an EMS training organization that's geared towards providing training in first aid, CPR, EMR, which is first responders, and EMTs. So those are persons that work on the ambulance, and any pre-hospital care. All right, so a first aid kit. By a show of hands, how many of you have a first aid kit at home? Okay. And do you know if your job has a first aid kit as well? When last did you check to see if anything is expired?
2 weeks ago.
Okay, fair enough. So it's very important that you regularly check your first aid kit so that something doesn't happen and then you see it's expired 2 years ago. All right, certain ointments and medications and whatnot, just keep track of those things. But bandages and whatnot, they're pretty good for a while. All right, so the image here shows more or less at minimum what you should have in your first aid kit. So you have bandages of varying sizes for different injuries. You would have medications, so maybe a pain relief, paracetamol, ibuprofen. If anyone has allergies, you can have antihistamines. And then, of course, you have creams and ointments. So antibiotic cream for scratches, hydrocortisone, antiseptic wipes. And then, of course, you need to have gloves. And scissors, tweezers, non-latex gloves, because you do have persons that might be allergic to latex, and you don't want to make it worse. And then, of course, a space blanket. So that is the aluminum foil type blanket. That is for persons that are losing a lot of heat and you need to try to keep them warm. And instant cold compress, that's usually for sprains. And also a CPR mask. Not all first aid kits come with a CPR mask. You can purchase that separately. Some are hard plastic, so then they can be used again. Of course, you disinfect them. You don't want to keep blood on it. And then there are also disposable ones. In addition to that, you can also have rubbing alcohol, but the rubbing alcohol is just to sanitize. It's not to pour on top of an open wound because it's very painful, and also you'll be killing cells in between, right? So if you have a wound, do not pour alcohol on it. Or peroxide, because then you're killing healthy cells. Personal medication. If someone has asthma, make sure they have their inhaler pump. You know, if someone has diabetes, make sure that you have insulin ready. You know, cater your first aid kit to what you have at home. And of course, a tourniquet. Not all come with it, but it might be very important. You know, in case somebody decides to run out in the eye of the hurricane and the winds turn back and they lose a limb. We'll get to that. All right, so what is CPR? Have any of you heard of CPR before? And you know what it stands for? Yes. So CPR is an emergency life-saving procedure, and it is performed when the heart stops beating. All right, so there's a difference between when someone is having a heart attack, so they're feeling the pain, they're feeling the pressure, but they're still alert. And cardiac arrest is when the heart stops, which means the person is not breathing, there's no heartbeat, and they're unconscious. In the second scenario, a cardiac arrest, that is when you will begin performing CPR. Now, what can assist or help CPR is using an AED. Right? So this is just one that we use for the classes for practicing. There are different brands, they look different, but all of them function the same. the first thing you do is turn it on. How many of your jobs have one of these? 1, 2, 3. All right. I think we need to make more AED awareness in businesses. Because what this does is it sends a shock to the heart to try and get a rhythm back. If you don't have that, then you will be doing compressions until help arrives. And I'll be demonstrating that soon. So that is what an AED does. It sends a shock, or it tries to shock the heart back into a rhythm. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just demonstrate the steps of CPR with the thought that, no, I'll explain that after. So please bear with me. I know you want me to do it on the desk, but I'll have to do it on the floor. All right, so the first thing that you need to do, can anyone tell me if you have an idea? All right. Yes, the first thing you need to do before you go and help someone is make sure that the scene is safe. If the scene is not safe, you can become a victim. And a safe scene can mean something that as simple as, do they have a dog or do they not have a dog? Because dogs can be very protective of their owners, and you don't want to try and help someone and then the dog comes and attacks you. All right, so the scene is safe. Next step, you approach the person and you check for responsiveness. Hello, are you okay? All right, you need to tap the shoulders to see if maybe they're just taking a nap, Carnival. No, Carnival, some people might be very drunk, pass out on the side of the road. All right, so let's just say this person is having a serious emergency. They're not responding. You shout for help. Help, help, can someone help me? All right, if there's someone around, make eye contact. You, call 911. All right, you don't say someone call 911, because then someone is gonna be like, not me. All right, so you shout for help. You make sure that someone is calling 911. If no one is around and you have a phone, call 911 and put it on speaker. All right, I carefully unbuttoned his shirt, but in real life, you just rip it. All right, so you check to see if they're breathing. Breathing, are you seeing the chest rise? Is it rising? If it's not, they're not breathing, you begin CPR. All right, so the compressions go with the beat. Staying alive, okay? So you put your hand in the center of the chest, you keep your arms locked out, no bending, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, staying alive, ha, ha. All right, you don't want to go too fast because your heart doesn't beat so fast, unless you're really nervous or for other reasons. But, so you have to keep a consistent pace as though you're beating the heart for the person, okay? Next, after you give your compressions, so 30 compressions, then you give 2 breaths. However, in this case, this is somebody I've never met in my life. I don't know who it is. I am not going to do mouth-to-mouth on a stranger. You don't know what they have, illnesses, something that you might catch. In that case, you would just continue doing compressions. And the safest thing is to have someone with you that you can change. Because I'm already out of breath. Well, okay, maybe because I'm singing as well. But it takes a lot of energy to constantly give compressions. So you will continue to do that until either an AED arrives, or you have someone that can switch with you and help, or the ambulance arrives. All right, so those are the steps for CPR. Next, we have stop the bleed. So in the event, a hurricane happens, maybe the roof fell in and a part of it landed on someone's arm. They have a cut on them, they're bleeding out. The first thing that you will do, or at least try to do, is put on your gloves. But of course, you don't want to leave the person bleeding out. So I will have my lovely colleague assist me. Yeah. All right, so one of the important things with stopping the bleed is ensuring that you put pressure on the wound. All right, so whichever hand you choose. All right, so she's bleeding. I don't have on gloves, but I don't want to put on gloves and waste time. So what I would do, after introducing myself, asking if you need help, some people might tell you no. I will give her some gauze and ask her to put it on the wound and apply pressure. Yeah? So that should already start the process of stopping the bleeding. And then I will put on my gloves, which I forgot to bring today, imaginary gloves. And then I will take over, and then I will put pressure as well. All right? When putting pressure on a wound, you don't want to use your fingertips and press, because that is very painful and you might be pressing into the wound. You want to have a flat palm, and then you press into it. All right? And do not be peeping. Just don't be looking, is it bleeding? Is it still bleeding? Because the idea of putting the gauze on top is to start the clotting formation so that the wound starts to close itself. It's like a Band-Aid. If you rip it, you take the scab off, and then the bleeding continues. All right? So now that the bleeding is kind of under control, we're going to take a bandage and we're going to wrap the wound. Now, what you do is you always start from the bottom and you go up. You don't need to use the whole thing depending on the size. All right? And you make it tight enough that it stays, but not tight enough that you cut off circulation, because then she might have blue fingers. All right, so once it's wrapped, you can always take a scissor, cut it, and then you can tuck it in, and then, you stop the bleed. Now, if the bleeding is too much and no amount of pressure is stopping it, or, for example, the person lost their limb, whether by accident or, sometimes construction workers that might be cutting, using a chainsaw, and then by some freak accident their arm comes off, they're going to be bleeding out. You can't use a gauze and just put it on the stub and try to stop the bleeding. So in that case, I'll take this. Thank you. You will need a tourniquet. Or you can make one yourself. I don't have the spoon. All right. So tourniquets, in movies, they usually use a belt. But in reality, a belt is not going to be enough to keep it tight. This is a commercial tourniquet. You only use these on limbs, so arms and legs. All right? You can't stop the bleed on the torso. You have all your internal organs, and you can't use it on the neck unless you're trying to actively kill the person. All right? Yes, and also you do not put it on a joint. If the arm is cut, let's just say here, the tourniquet is always about 2 inches above, all right? If that means it's on the joint, then you go above that, because joints are movable, and if you put it here and the person does this, it's not the same pressure tightness. All right, so let's say here. So you place the tourniquet on. I'm not going to do it tight on her, but in reality, you're going to pull as tight. It's not a nice feeling. It's very painful, but they might not even be focused on that because they're looking at their arm over there. So you pull it tight enough, as tight as you can, and then what you're going to do is the windlass. You're going to turn, and you're going to keep turning and turning until you see that the bleeding has stopped. That is when you're going to lock it in place, and then you're going to write the time that you've locked the tourniquet in place. This is important because then they know how long the bottom of the limb has gone without circulation, without bleeding blood. Yeah. You can also make one at home. I'll be honest and say I forgot the spoon. But you will need to use a hard object, so a metal spoon, or if you have a stick, a very strong stick, not that you do so and it breaks. I do not advise using a fork or a knife because those are sharp, and if anything goes wrong, you might cause further damage. In a case like that, what you would do is you take a piece of cloth, sheet, if you have a triangular bandage, you fold, small, and the same process, you're going to tie it as tight as you can. Let's pretend this is a sturdy something. And then you're going to tie that in place. Where are you? Oh, it pulled. So now you've created a makeshift windlass, all right? You're going to turn it, the same process, and then you're just going to wrap it, and then you're going to tie it under, and then it should stay in place. Yeah? The same, yep. You write the time. If the person is passed out, you can write it on their forehead, they won't know. But, no, I was actually serious. But also, it's because medical personnel that are helping, they always check the face, so you won't miss it. If you write it on a hand or somewhere small, they might miss it. But on the face, it's right there. And also, after you bandage the person, depending on if it's a sprain, if there's additional injury, you just want them to keep it close, you can do, how do you call it? Yes, a sling. So the easiest way that I remember to do this, a triangular bandage has a long end and then a short piece at the bottom, right? Okay, so the short corner goes to the side of the elbow. Okay. And then this side comes over. Okay? Let me just fix it. Uh-huh. Yeah? All right. So you make sure the person is comfortable, and when you're tying it at the back, do not tie it directly on the spine. Tie it a bit to the side, and you can also use one of your bandages just to cushion as well. You tie it. Make sure it's tight enough. And then you tuck in any loose ends. You don't want it snagging on anything. And if you have too much on the side, then you can twist. But this is okay. So that's how you do this. It's whatever's comfortable for the patient. Yeah. So that was bleeding, tourniquet, how to apply the sling. Now we have some regular first aid emergencies. So we already touched on the bleeding. If someone gets burned, do you know what to do? All right. So, yes, you run the burn on the cool running water, not cold, not hot. Do not put Vaseline on top of the burn. I know that's something that was done in the past, but Vaseline actually traps the heat inside and makes it worse. Depending on how severe the burn is, you want to try and keep the area dry, put a dry cloth over it, and get them to emergency help as soon as possible. So fractures, broken arms, we're not going to get into that today, But definitely try and keep the person in as comfortable as a position as you can. If you're trained into putting on a splint, then you can do so. For sprains, ice pack, keep the foot up, you know. For eye injuries, so if something gets in someone's eye, whether it's a dry powder, a liquid, or something, you're going to need to rinse with water, but you're going to turn the person's head on the side. So if this is the affected eye, you're going to turn it on this side and you're going to throw running water to cleanse it. You don't do it the other way because then whatever is in the eye is going to end up in the other eye and then you have, you know, two eyes that are in need of help. All right, we touched on CPR as well. Shock is a more advanced something. It would be very difficult to explain. And with choking, everyone knows if you're choking on something, your hands automatically go to your neck. Yeah? All right, if someone is choking, don't just go behind them because they're already panicking and then somebody just randomly comes in behind them and wants to help. Just go to the person. Are you choking? Yeah? It's okay. Yes. All right, can I help you? Okay, so what you do is you're going to make a fist with your thumb out. You're going to go behind the person and try and find their belly button. And you go right above that, and you're going to go in and up, but with a lot of force. All right, so you're going to push in and up because you're going to try and use whatever air is left in their lungs to try and push the item out. Yeah? If the person is a child and they're small, you can go on your knees and do it. If the person is tall, then you get somebody that's tall to help. Pregnant? Yes. If someone is pregnant and they're actively showing, what you can do is instead of, you're not going down there, what you would do is you would, the same way you do compressions, you place your fist at the center of the chest and then you push straight back. Okay, so there's no up and in and up, but you just push straight back. So that's for pregnant women and very obese persons where you can't wrap your hand around their stomach. Thank you again. Yeah, but for tall persons, like if somebody is this tall, I'm not going to be able to help, and I'm not going to stand on a chair or a table to try and help, and then they lose consciousness, they fall back, I fall off the chair, you know, break an elbow, something. So you help within your means. What can I help with? Am I able to help? Do I need additional assistance? So this is our contact information in case you want to do CPR first aid, if you want to renew your certificate if you've done it before, or if you don't want to be certified, which is valid for 2 years, you can also do like a family and friends. So it was just for basic information, which is really good for groups, just to have the basic information. So in case something happens, you would know what to do.
Good evening. My name is Silvanico Pauletta, and I will be talking with you today about large-scale incidents on St. Maarten and how we handle them. I'm with the fire department. The head of our department is the Minister of General Affairs, recently installed, the Honorable Luc Mercelina, and the fire chief is Mr. Clive Richardson, and we have in total 4 sections. We have the section repression, which currently is also headed by the fire chief, Clive Richardson. We have material and logistics, which is all the material that we need to do our job. That is being managed by Mr. Sheryl James. Then we have the section disaster management, also being managed by Mr. Paul Maarten, and I myself am responsible for the section PPO, which is prevention, preparation, training and education. And I also assist in disaster management, as I'm also a specialist in that, and hence the reason I'm standing here before you today. So, just to put things in perspective, the red dot that you see in the middle, that's St. Maarten. Then we have, on the southern side, we have the ABC Islands. And all the way up in the north, there across the ocean, you see a small red dot, that's the Netherlands. And together, we're the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we are, so when something happens, when a disaster happens, we're not all by ourselves. Those 3 red dots, they are each other's partner. That's to place things in context. And yes, St. Maarten, we are the smallest island. Don't forget, we are the smallest island that share 2 countries, 2 nations. So on the northern side, we have St. Maarten, and the southern part, we spell it with 2 A's, and we call ourselves St. Maarten. And we are the Dutch part of the island. And what we're talking about today is the southern part, and we are, of course, that means we have other legislation compared to the northern part. And as I said, we're talking today about disasters. So, what is a disaster? Anyone? Well, what makes something a disaster? Because what's a disaster for me don't necessarily need to be a disaster for you. Me having a leakage in my house and my whole house running underwater. Yes, my furniture, what happens to my furniture and my GB bill, it's a disaster for me. But doesn't make it a disaster for all of us. Yeah, a disaster can be defined as an event during which public safety is severely disturbed, but also life, health, and well-being of many persons are affected, and it can also be the environment of large material interests are being threatened or damaged. So oil spill can be a disaster as well. And what makes a disaster? When it requires a coordinated deployment. And basically that's what I will be presenting today. How does a coordinated deployment look here in St. Maarten? As I said earlier, northern part, southern part, both have 2 different sets of legislations. The legislation on the southern part that deals with disaster management is basically we have a national ordinance of disaster management, and as you can read, it provides rules and regulations about preparations for and management of disasters. And also, it lays out the disaster management tasks and responsibilities of government. So, if you want to know about disasters, it's pretty important that you know. These legislation is public, so you know the task of the government and also the responsibility that lies by you as well, because all of us as citizens have our own responsibility as well. And together with national ordinance, we also have a national decree which contains the disaster plan. And in that disaster plan, it includes an organizational structure and tasks and responsibilities of the various services, ministries, departments, and organizations. And it also describes the possible disaster types the island may be confronted with. So why a disaster plan? It's written there already. Because we need a coordinated approach to bring order in chaos. That's what it's about. So basically you have, it's a one-headed command structure. It's no several heads, no. In this case, to bring structure, to bring order, there's one head. You're going to see that soon time when I show the organization. So when we talk about disasters, we think about hurricanes, tropical storms. And yes, some of you might, or most of us might still remember that horrible picture there. But when we talk about disaster, the disaster plan also shows some other ones. It also takes into account some other disaster types. So we're talking about meteorological causes, aviation. Yes, we don't like to think about that when we catch the plane or when we have loved ones on the plane, but also could happen. Accident at sea. Yes, last weekend, flood could happen. Accidents involving toxic or biological material. Contamination of drinking water. We might take it for granted every time we drink from the pipe, but it can be contaminated. Thank God it's being tested properly. Also, we have food poisoning, an epidemic. We have accidents involving flammable explosive substances. Anything else that we're not mentioning yet that you might think could cause a disaster? Riots. Okay. Bushfire. Anything else? Car accidents with multiple vehicles. Yes, we don't like to think, but imagine a tour bus. Earthquakes, yes. Yes, tsunamis, volcano, nuclear. We don't really think much about that, but it could just happen that. So as you can see, one of them that wasn't mentioned is fire in densely built up areas. Collapse of a large building. Panicking crowds, riots, a transport accident. We just have all those big tanks, all those trucks transporting some chemicals. Can you say a hostage situation? Sorry? A hostage situation. A hostage situation. Well, what we have terrorism threat or act. Sorry? A meteor strike. Well, I think if depend the size of the meteor, a small one. Okay. Yes. Then we might have a fire or a wildfire. But if you're talking about a reasonable size meteor, yes. There's nobody left to ask questions anymore. But cybercrime. Yes. And one also that we don't talk about much, but a disaster abroad involving Sint Maarten citizens. Inside the plan, there are the following alarm phases recognized. So you have different categories. We have the routine 0, which is daily operations, police, fire department, and ambulance working together. Then we have alarm phase 1, where you have a bigger size of event accident, and where some coordination is needed, but there's no effect to the area. Now, alarm phase 2, there we have a possible effect to the area. That means the effects also need to be managed. So now we need a tactical approach next to the operational approach that is basically dealing with the accident itself, with the incident itself. And then alarm phase 3, where we affect to the collectivité, our northern neighbors, and also to other territories. Then we have an alarm phase 3. Organization. So on operational level, we have COPI, coordination of the place of the incident, as we mentioned just now. Then we have on tactical level, we have 10 ESFs, which are the emergency service functions. I'll go explain a little bit better, a little further sometime. Then on strategic level, we have the Prime Minister, who actually heads the whole organization. On the tactical level, it's being chaired by the fire chief, and he meets together with the ESF coordinators. They meet together, actually, they meet either in this room itself, or they meet in the comm room, or they meet at the fire station where is the official emergency operations center. And the disaster management organization also have some partners, which is, one of them is the public prosecutor, and also we have the governor. And if we need, for example, assistance from within the kingdom, like military, it's officially requested through the governor. The ESFs, first ESF1 is the utilities, so water and energy. We have ESF2, which coordinate all issues with telecommunication. ESF3 is public works, infrastructure, and logistics. Then we have ESF4, which deals with the safety, the hazardous material, and rescuing. So that's basically the fire department. ESF5 is public order, security, and traffic regulation. So that's the justice. ESF6 is the medical assistance and public health. Well, interesting that you're saying VSA. Actually, VSA has two ESFs. So VSA has the medical, the one that's dealing with the medical chain, and VSA also has the ESF7, which is evacuation and sheltering. So that part deals with the social aspect of the disaster. And then we have ESF8, which is public information and awareness. There are colleagues from DCOM. And ESF9 is governmental affairs, which makes sure that government can continue function, thank you. And then ESF10 deals with the seaport, the airport, and the hotel, and all our guests that we have on the island. So here we have, let's say this square represents an incident. Now, when an incident happens, somebody will dial 911, 919, call the different emergency services. So as they're being dialed, they will come. So police will come to the scene. Police sees, hey, ambulance, fire department is needed. They will be called and they will appear to the scene. And when they're there, they're seeing the fire department, the officer of the fire department is the leader among the equals, primus inter pares. So the coordination of the incident is requested. That's what we call COPI. An operation leader from every single service will be there on the location to coordinate their services and meet together with the different leaders to set priorities and make decisions, and also see what are particular dilemmas, what are particular bottlenecks that needs to be solved. So while they're there in COPI, as you can see also DCOM, so a representative of communication will join. A representative also of, for example, if it happens at a company, or if it happens at the airport, a representative of the airport or the company will come and join this meeting, so that all the different entities that are working together have a coordinated approach. Let's say now they're seeing that, hey, it actually has an effect to the surrounding. So then the tactical teams now, the ESFs, will be activated. The coordination of information for government and population is needed. That will be done then by the EOC on a tactical level. There's also a coordination of execution of the different the action centers. That is what also will be handled by the EOC on a tactical level. So all these ESFs now are communicating with each other. You have certain aspects of an incident can go beyond what that they might have to take decisions that go outside the normal policies, the more normal legislation, and that's when we go to the strategic level. And that's where now we would actually have the Prime Minister would actually be heading the disaster management organization, because now the legislative component is involved as well in the decision making. So what we see then, when the Prime Minister actually, so the Prime Minister is actually the one heading the organization then, the Prime Minister actually will inform the Minister of Justice at that moment that the disaster is in effect. So that the EOC has been activated. Now, as I said earlier, if the militaries are needed, the Prime Minister also, through the Office of the Prime Minister, the governor will be contacted and the request will be made. Continue. And then the governor, so as I said, through the governor, then the military will join the structure as well on the different levels. And also, the strategic team will be also having contact with the different disaster management organizations from surrounding countries. We have different ways of communicating with each other through portaphones. We communicate during disasters with mobile phones, but also we have our radio for in case the radio falls out, continue. In case the radio falls out, we also have an agreement with the military that actually the military will assist us. Continue. The military will assist us with communication, so every emergency service will get a military person with a radio assigned to it to ensure that we can communicate. In that way, even if all the towers are out, we can still communicate. So there are plans in place to ensure that we can continue respond in case of a disaster. Also, what you have to realize, this organization is not functioning all by itself. This organization is to coordinate response. You here are also part of the response. So why I have done this explanation? For you to understand and try to get a grasp on where is your role and your spot within this organization. I can say majority of you will actually fall on the ESF7, which is the social component. You're the one dealing with the population. And so ESF7, that's why ESF7 has a huge task, which is to coordinate not just the response from government side, but also make sure that you work together. And that is not a competition, but that's a collaboration.